There's one thing you can do if you don't want next year to repeat what happened to you in 2025, and that is to change the way you plan for goals and execute on them. Today, we're going to break down how to make 2026 your best year yet. How do you set your goals so you actually achieve them this year? I'm going to give you guys my step-by-step process that I've been doing for 15 years so you can steal my homework. Because like T.S. Eliot said, only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far they can go. I always think about this line that Dave Chappelle said, at any given moment, the one with the bigger dream wins. And then he talked about this story where he always tries to control the dream. And he said, I am a very powerful dreamer. But I think the trick to that is you actually got to know what you want. Otherwise, you will be in somebody else's dream. And so this big goal that you have today, if you don't take the right steps to hit it, you will never have the life that you want. You will be living in a series of like maybes, potentiallys, could haves, should haves, and never actually achieved. But my goal is that you steal my homework today and you don't live anywhere near that. There's a couple concepts I want you to steal today. One I call the goal gravity. So this is the force that pulls everything in your business and life towards whatever your target is, because your goal actually means nothing if your habits stay the same. And so you can't have, first of all, small goals. Like T.S. Eliot said, you need a big goal because that allows your priorities to sharpen and allows you, even if you miss, and you probably will, you land somewhere you couldn't have reached playing it small. So I want you to think about your goal as this big, huge planet that's just pulling all of these things to it because the gravitational pull is so dramatic. If you want to achieve something really tiny, you're never going to have the gravity to do it. So write down a goal, but make it fucking big. That's one. Then a lot of times I realize you have to actually change your mindset to hit that goal, that it's actually scary to write down those big, huge, over-the-top things that most people will tell you you will never be able to achieve. And so the fork in the road is that most people never go big and they do what I call exploitation instead of exploration. So exploitation is when you just kind of keep repeating what already works. You iterate a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better until your life kind of looks like everybody else's because you've never done something really, really big. You've just exploited the status quo. Exploration is you only obsess on what might work that you've never done before. You explore the unexplored. Both have utility, but the catch is exploitation just gets you efficiency, a little bit better. Exploration is where you get breakthroughs. And so right now, almost everything, schools, jobs, nudge us towards being better exploiters, right? Like memorize the right answer, optimize for what's worked before, don't question the playbook, definitely don't risk looking dumb. And so they're trying to get you to refine, but not rethink. And that's okay until you realize your whole business or life is built on habits you stopped questioning years ago. And right now, I think the world is full of exploiters. And so we have to get you to actually become one of the few explorers if you want to live a life that most people will only ever dream of. And this is the time to do it right now, towards the end of the year. So I thought I'd tell you how I set my huge goals. And then I'm going to give you tricks from the biggest goal setters in the world that I have learned and implemented in my life. And it kind of starts with this 5-step process. So I've done this for, 15 years now. Step 1, I have learned to use the words impossible with the greatest caution. This is actually von Braun who said that. And I like to steal for my first step this idea from Jeff Bezos, which is called regret minimization. And how do you do that? So regret minimization means that Bezos didn't set annual goals early on. He set irreversible direction goals. So what does that mean? In 1994, he used what became known as this framework I'm going to tell you. And he said, every time he thinks about a goal, he asks himself, when I am 80, will I regret not trying this? His goal wasn't, I want to make $1 million. I want to build a company. I want to do a startup. It was, I want to build the world's most customer-centric company in the world. I want to be the fittest person ever at 40. Something that at 80 you will regret if you do not try. That makes everything else sort of a branch on a tree. Right? So your first question in goal setting is like, what will you regret? Not what do you want, but what will your soul scream at you for not having tried? The second thing I do is I say every year has a name. So if you go back through my actual goal journal every year, I name my year first because I think names are really powerful. And if you name it, you can frame it. And if you frame it, then you can actually achieve it. And so, for instance, I wrote down some of them for you, and I'll show you what it looks like here. 2024, I called my full send year. And after I write a name for my year, I write a sentence on it, which is what I think you should do next. So that year for me, it was the year I fully send it on being myself, taking big swings, on periods of sprints and rests, and doing it my way with joy and fun and brilliance. So what is your year? In 2025, this year was the year of flow. And that was more of what we want, less of what we don't. So in the past, I had written down, these were my words. It's kind of fun to look at them today. In the past, I had listened to too many others. I'd done all the work myself. I hadn't given the hard feedback in the moment. I'd been the one pushed and shepherding everyone. And this year I said no more. Now I am the one who gets to receive and have others push for me. I'm no longer in a fight or flight and instead able to conduct the orchestra without playing every instrument. So 2025 was my year of pros and flow. And you saw that probably in my business. I hired a bunch of pros to do things that I was doing every single aspect of it before, and it was feeling like a little bit too much. The year before that, I was okay with it. I needed to do it all because I was fully sending it. So this year for you, what is your year? Name it. Tell us in the comments. What is one sentence example of how you want to see that year for you? Then I like to steal this idea from Elon Musk for my third one. He calls it first principles and backwards timelines. So here's how he sets his goals. Musk starts with what physics says is possible, not what society believes. And I love this. I say to my company right now too. Somebody will come to me and they'll say, hey, we can't do X, Y, Z. And I'll say, hold on. I hate that word can't, by the way. Be careful if you ever say can't to yourself. And I'll say, by can't, do you mean, is it physically impossible, aka against the laws of physics? Is it illegal to do it, aka you'd go to jail? Or is it contractually obligated? You don't do it? Otherwise, that's just a preference or a resource issue. Can't only means it's illegal, it's physically impossible, or it is against some sort of contractual terms we have written down in ink or blood. And if it is not those three things, then can't's not the right word. Choosing not to could be the right word, but it's not can't. And so Musk starts with physics. That is first principle. Then he sets a target outcome. So he would say that reverse engineers every dependency, backward to present. Meaning, if he says, I want to take a rocket to go to the moon, I want to make life multi-planetary, as he would say, then he would map, okay, I need rockets. Then I might need reusable ones because it'd be way too expensive if we're not reusing them. I need to land that rocket if I want to reuse it, which means that I need to cut costs, which means that I need to manufacture these bad things, which means I need this much capital or money. So he turned the biggest goal, multi-planetary, into the first constraint. Now, how do you do this for you? I would do the same thing. First principles. Let's say it's, I want to make $1 million this year. I would say, okay, maybe that's big enough. Maybe it's not. But first principles, I want to free my family financially from ever having to work again. Maybe that's $1 million. Maybe that's 10 million. Okay, now work backwards. Well, how much money do I need? How much money do I spend? What is my skill stack? How long would it take me to get there? Could I do it faster? What mechanisms are real to get there? Instead of just telling me what you want, why don't you tell me what is the path to get the thing that you want? Then I'm going to make you tell me, what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Here's the truth about owning a business. You work hard to build something real, but without the right insurance, one accident or mistake can cost you weeks of headaches, lost revenue, and sleepless nights. Next Insurance gives small business owners instant online coverage so you can protect what you've built. No long forms, no overpriced policies, no waiting around. Just fast, simple protection designed for your business. Policies start at $29 a month, and you get an instant certificate of insurance so you can win bigger contracts and operate like a true pro. So whether you're a creator, contractor, consultant, or Main Street operator, Next keeps you covered because risk comes with ownership, but getting protected shouldn't be one of them. Check out nextinsurance.com/Codie and protect what you've built today. And so let's talk about how I do these goals in my life. I like to categorize them. I'm not so unidirectional as Elon Musk, where I'm like multiplanetary or die. I have a couple that are important to me. My first one is always my relationship. So this is literally what some of mine were last year. It was, we're happy and we argue well. think it's ridiculous to think you're not going to argue. Just learn to argue fairly. Walk. I want to go on a walk every day together. I think that's like a beautiful moment that we have. I want to have quote unquote our version of work-life balance, which means we live in Austin for most of the year and we have a house by the water and we can go there in aggregate for 2 to 3 months a year. Then work. That's the second most important to me after my relationship. That means I want to hit a certain revenue target. It means this podcast, I wanted that to become a top 50 podcast in the world. By the way, we did it. I wanted to have a best-selling book. I literally wrote down a book that is a New York Times bestseller and I sell 1 million copies and have a sold-out launch date in person with 200K people signed up. And you know what else happened? We fucking did it. And so you write them down and it's fun to go look back and see what you did or didn't. Travel. I said, I want to live somewhere with a view of the ocean for 1 to 3 months. I did that in aggregate. I wanted to go on a bucket list trip. We did. We went Nicaragua surfing. I wanted to tour around the country, create a movement. We did that with Main Street Millionaire. And then I think you should have some fun in life. So my last category is fun. And so for me, that might be some silly things even. I wanted to feel more sexy and feminine. Look at the shoulder. See, look at that. Fucking nailing it. I wanted to play with makeup and hair. I've actually never cared about any of this stuff, but I thought I was like maybe becoming a bit too masculine. So I thought, let's get back into this feminine nature. I wanted to be sleeping really well and wake up happy and refreshed and not anxious and thrilled with my life, which means that I drink less now because red wine makes me crazy. I don't know about you guys. Tell me in the comments. I fucking love it, but I don't sleep well. And then I really wanted to focus on my enjoying the journey. I don't know if you ever feel like you've achieved some of the things you want in life, but you don't enjoy the journey to achievement. I didn't like that. So I was like, I want to be really happy. I want to feel like I have so much to accomplish, but I'm enjoying it and thankful for it. Okay. So now you've got your buckets. I like having 3 to 5. That's all I allow. The next thing though, you got to figure out what are the things you want to say no to. Say no to the things that aren't a fuck yes. That was really big for me. And so my say no list included like things I wouldn't do with my mindset and things I wouldn't do with my health, which comes back to health being no more alcohol. I didn't nail that one, you guys. I didn't nail it. If you follow me on the internet, you probably know that. I said I wanted to do hard 75 again. Also did not nail that. And then I wanted no more bread or processed food. And that, my friends, that's the tragedy. That has absolutely not been accomplished. So, okay, didn't nail all my goals last year, but I nailed more of them than I did before. Then I write a more of, less of list. What does this mean? Well, every year I want to talk about the things that I loved that I did and the things that I wish I would like a little bit of less of that. And so Warren Buffett kind of famously did this another way. He called it the anti-goal method. So how he sets goals is he uses a 5-25 rule, which is he would say to you, write 25 long-term goals, circle the top 5 of yours, and avoid the other 20 at all costs. And he believes that more goals equal more failure. And I love this story. He was talking about his pilot. And his pilot was saying all these things that he wanted to accomplish this year. And Buffett had him do this. He said, write down these 25, circle the top 5. And he was saying, okay, well, how are you going to choose which one of these to do next? And the pilot said, well, I'm going to do this one, this one, this one. And he just took a big pen and just X'd out all 20 of his goals that weren't in the top 5. And said, if you're actually serious about the top 5, you have to be completely relentless of cutting the bottom 20. This is called ruthless focus. So every year I write a list of things I want more of in the year and a list of things that I want less of. Because the truth of the matter is you can't keep adding always. The world requires subtraction. This last year, some of mine were less respect seeking. You try to get people to respect you who you honestly don't respect at all. You get upset when somebody belittles your accomplishment. Silly. Partnership deals. I wanted less of those this year. Like last year, I did really, really 2 bad partnership deals that cost me 7 figures and time. And I was like, I am so tired of being a workhorse for somebody else's reward. So no new friends if they want partnerships. And then chosen struggle. Like, do you ever feel like you get off on hard things being the way? This year I was like, no, I'm going to see what it's like to paddle with, not against the current. So those are my less of. What are yours? Then my more of. It's like, I want to be more feminine. I want to take big swings. I really focused on the fact that I was going to try a few more big swings and sprints and then rests. And then fun. I talk a lot about serious things, money, ownership, saving our country. But I want to focus on the fact that we can have fun while we're doing it. And so like some small things here, even at the company this week, we had this big event, we had top tier attendance. And so I was like, how about a Tendy Award? Well, really, Chris came up with the Tendy Award because we all know my husband's funnier than I am. And he's like, let's get 200 chicken tendies for the guy who drove attendance more than anybody else. And we'll give him the annual Tendy Award. And I was like, that's hysterical. Let's do that. So I want you to think about, what is your year going to be? Now, one of the final questions becomes, how do you actually follow through on these? Because your life is going to be your daily actions multiplied and compounded. And so a long time ago, I read a book by Sam Walton, the creator of Walmart. It's an incredible book. And he talks about obsessively measurable daily goals. And so how he sets his goals. Well, I think you guys have your big goals already. Now you have your more of, less of list. And instead of setting like a bunch of corporate objectives, Walton would set daily numeric targets that everybody could see. So for his company, that might have been like sales per square foot, inventory turnover, store growth, shrinkage reduction. He believes everything improves when everyone knows the score. I think that's the same in business and in life. So the question for you is, what are you tracking every day to make sure that you actually know the scoreboard? And one of the ways I do this that I'll show you right now, I use an app called Streaks. I'm not affiliated with it, but I should be because I use it all the time. And basically this app shows you kind of like each day if you hit your streak or not on the small things you care about. And so on here, it's like workout for me, probiotic, sauna, sun, focus on something to do with revenue, blah, blah, blah. You can have one just like this. He told this story that I loved. If you haven't read the book, it's super good. But Walton would basically talk about how he drove 100,000 miles a year with one goal: to visit the stores and ask managers, what is your goal today? Not this quarter, today. And then he would ask them often if they hit it. How do they know if they were going to hit their goals or not? So today, go follow my little chart for you, because I know that if you obsess on the thing you want every single day, you're more likely to get it. And so let's talk about some patterns here. What have I seen from the greatest people in the world about setting goals? There's really only 5 patterns, and if you hit them, you will achieve your goals more often. Pattern 1, they set far fewer goals than normal people. 2 or 3 directional goals, thousands of executive decisions continuously over time. Pattern 2, their goals are binary, not incremental. So make life multiplanetary, dominate microprocessors, become the most customer-obsessed company on earth, become a mom, find a husband, grow your business. Binary goals. They are qualitative in some ways, but they lead to massive quantitative outcomes. They will change the trajectory of your life. Pattern 3, they all use time horizons that scare normal people. Bezos famously talked about 7-year flywheels. Gates is known as a multi-decade architect. Walton, he did daily execution, but on decades-long wins. And then Musk does 20 to 50-year targets. Pattern 4, they don't confuse goals with tasks. So they set direction and then build systems. And 5, they document and they track, because what gets measured gets managed, just like Peter Drucker says. The great thing for you guys to know this year, it takes 21 days to create a habit, but I think it takes 90 days to create a totally different lifestyle. Start your timer. It is now day 1. Do you think today's processed foods are like cigarettes in the 1980s?
You mean the thing that we don't quite know is killing us, but is actually killing us? Yeah, absolutely. I think RFK Jr. said it really well, and this is timely, that we're clearly being poisoned. I mean, anyone who looks at Westernized Americans from a zoomed out perspective over the last 50 years can see that something has gone horribly wrong with us. Obesity rates, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disease, everything is going the wrong direction. And yet we are being counseled by our government to eat healthy, and more people will respond to surveys saying they're eating healthy. More people will respond to surveys saying they're exercising. Less people are smoking, but everything is going in the wrong direction. We're fatter, sicker, less healthy, more depressed. So what's going on here? There's something happening.
Yeah, and what do you say to people who say, we're just eating more calories because food is better tasting and cheaper and more available, so it's just calories, it's not the GMOs, it's not the processed foods at all? What do you think?
I think they're wrong. I think that if you look at data, we are not really eating more calories. If we're eating more calories, it's small, and it doesn't account for the increase in all of these chronic illnesses that are just really doubling over the span of 20 or 30 years. I mean, that's not just 100 extra calories a day. And then you have to look at it from a holistic perspective and ask, why are we eating more calories? Food is not more available today than it was in the 1970s. You can still go to the grocery store. There were no shortages in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Humans could eat the exact same amount of food. So some studies suggest that we're not eating more calories. Some studies suggest that we're eating slightly more calories. But if we are eating more calories, and I think in general a lot of people have the issue, and it's with satiety. And I think that that is another insidious problem with ultra-processed food, is that it makes us more hungry. And that hunger cue is very, very hard for us to ignore, if not impossible, nearly impossible. You can be super disciplined and lose weight eating Twinkies, but eventually that hunger is just going to catch up with you. You can lose weight with a caloric deficit of bagels or potatoes or any junk food. It's not that you can't lose weight eating processed food. It's just going to be much more difficult. And when we look at studies, when we put humans in controlled environments, and there's now 2 studies on this. Kevin Hall did a study, and there was recently a researcher in Japan that did kind of the same thing. They can put humans in a feeding ward where they control all of their intakes, and they present people with very similar sets of meals. One of them is ultra-processed food. One of them is essentially unprocessed food. They try and match the foods for presented calories, presented fat, protein, carbohydrates, presented salt, sugar, all of those things. And people are allowed to eat as much as they want, and the ultra-processed foods group invariably eat more. They come back for seconds and thirds. So there's probably something in these foods that are also sabotaging satiety. And that is kind of the beginning of the problem.
Interesting. What if the counter argument was that they just taste better than the healthy foods, and so we want more of that? Could that be an argument or no?
Taste better is that's a subjective thing, right? Taste better is happening in your brain, right? So taste better is not something that we can objectively measure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it gets confusing sometimes as a consumer. Like, I have a lot of people on the podcast, and I am not a nutritionist. I am not a doctor. I try to stay fit. But it's confusing because there seems to be a war going on between multiple sides of the coin. And I think the war is interesting in a few ways. Like, even I was watching a video where you said canola oil is toxic sludge and got flagged as misinformation on Instagram. Like, what is canola oil? That was fascinating in your video. And why do you think that gets tagged as misinformation?
Right. So it's kind of like, who writes the history books?
Yeah.
Who determines what is truth? In 2024, if I'm saying it on Instagram, Meta determines what is truth, right? If I'm saying it on X, Community Notes determines what is truth. And that's a little bit better situation, thanks Elon. Not perfect, but a group of community members can have a more sort of democratic process than Meta. Mark Zuckerberg and his CEO of Instagram get to say, well, we've decided that we're going to look at this one meta-analysis, which is a study of studies on seed oils. And this researcher, usually they reference a meta-analysis from a researcher at Tufts. His name's Darius Mozaffarian, the same guy who gifted us with the Food Compass guidelines that told us that Fruit Loops and Cheerios were healthier than ground beef and eggs.
That's not great.
The same individual, clearly very omniscient when it comes to nutrition, very wise nutritional researcher, wrote a meta-analysis looking at some of the randomized controlled trials with seed oils, and he determined that no, seed oils are not bad for human health. So if I contradict him without actually getting to debate him or directly criticize his meta-analysis, which is kind of cherry-picked, then Meta can just say, nope, we're fact-checking you. So there is no objective truth in 2024. It just depends on the platform in which you are saying something. So they can say whatever they want, and you see this now post-election. You see this now. People are just, it's a war of fact-checking, right? And who fact-checks the fact-checkers? There's no one, I don't have the ability on Meta to come back on the back end and say, actually, here's why I think you're wrong. Here's why I actually think canola oil is problematic. So in answer to your question, canola oil is made from rape seeds, which are not actually a food for humans. It's different, perhaps, if we're talking about corn oil, because we eat corn, and we can talk about corn oil, right? I'm not a fan of corn oil either, and to get the equivalent of maybe 5 tablespoons of corn oil, you'd have to eat 70 ears of corn, which is a whole separate conversation. But rape seeds have never been eaten by humans and really cannot be eaten by humans. If you just take rapeseed oil, there is a large amount of this monounsaturated fat called erucic acid in rapeseed oil. And that is linked to cardiomyopathy, heart issues in animal studies, and so it's actually banned. You cannot sell rapeseed oil. You also can't sell mustard seed oil for similar reasons. Researchers, I think in the 1980s or 1990s, genetically modified rapeseed oil to a low erucic acid variant, but still containing this fatty acid, and that was what was called canola oil. So canola is an acronym for Canadian oil low acid. There is no such thing as canola, right? This is the rapeseed or the Canola Producers Association of Canada thinking, hey, we have fields and fields of canola oil. We have fields and fields of this rapeseed, like let's do something with it. This is often how seed oils got into our food supply. They were used originally for other things. Originally in the early 1900s, they were used as engine lubricants and on ships in World War I and World War II because they stay slippery when they are wet. They still maintain lubrication. So they were industrial byproducts, and now they've been used in our food supply. So that's the first thing that kind of should make us question, like, is this something we want to eat? So canola oil, not really a food for humans, contains small amounts of erucic acid, but like all of the seed oils, and this is why I think we can really draw a swath across the seed oils, whether it's canola, corn, sunflower, safflower, soybean, those are the big ones, sometimes peanut. They're all refined, bleached, and deodorized. So there's a great video on YouTube of how to make canola oil, and you see these little seeds that are in this extruding press, and they're kind of like waxy substances getting pressed out. Then you get this murky oil, which then has to be heated and then refined and bleached and deodorized and extracted with hexane, which can be contaminated with benzene. So you get these neurotoxic components that are even used to make the oil. Then it has to be deodorized again, multiple times heated to very high temperatures, as high as 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So you have a polyunsaturated oil, which is a fragile oil, which can become rancid, quote unquote, quickly, being heated to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The boiling temperature of water is 212, right? So that's like basically a very, very, very hot stove. It's insanely high temperature for an oil like that, and you quickly break the oil. You degrade the oil very quickly. So then you take all of that and you package it into a plastic bottle, which leaches cadmium, lead, and antimony into the oil, and it sits on the shelf of a grocery store getting exposed to artificial light for months at a time and oxidizing further. And we are told by the American Heart Association that that is a heart-healthy option because it lowers LDL.
That is just such a mindfuck.
And it's completely myopic because the only metric that we're using to say that it's healthy is LDL lowering, which is a whole nother ball of wax.
Running a podcast or any content operation is a grind. The editing, the clipping, the captions. It's enough to make anyone quit before the fun even starts. Enter Riverside. This tool is your content powerhouse. Forget decent quality virtual calls. Riverside gives you 4K video, pristine audio, and makes deadweight tasks disappear faster than bad ideas. Their text-based editor slashes, silences, and edits errors with one click. Needing some extra clips? Riverside's AI Magic Clips finds the moments people actually care about and delivers them to you. No guessing, no endless replays. And here's the kicker. You don't even need to record in the platform to use its features. You have the option to upload your footage to Riverside, letting it handle the heavy lifting. So you can save your brain power for the creative stuff. So stop drowning in edits, get busy creating, hit the link in the description, use code Cody, and thank me later. My father has high blood pressure, like so many Americans do. He's older. And what's interesting is I've heard you talk about this, that what does he do? He goes to the doctor gives him a series of pills for him to take. There's some talk of nutrition, marginal at best. And after years of being at the same doctor, nutrition is really not mentioned whatsoever. It's simply management of symptoms with these pills for this long. And I remember once we were going on a trip and he had forgotten his blood pressure medicine. And he's not particularly overweight or anything like that. He's quite normal. And he was worried about that. And I thought, oh my God, we have a healthy man sort of tied to a drug for something that I think you could fix with exercise and nutrition, theoretically.
100%.
What's going on there? And if you have high blood pressure, should you just take the pills? Is that the right answer alone?
So there's two different categories of high blood pressure, right? There's like primary hypertension and secondary hypertension. The majority of people who go to their doctor and get diagnosed with high blood pressure have primary hypertension, which is just related to diet and lifestyle. And most people, even in the mainstream medical community, would agree with that. Secondary hypertension is very rare. It can be caused by tumors that secrete things, that change the blood volume. We're not talking about secondary hypertension. That's a diagnosable medical condition that requires a more sophisticated workup. Primary hypertension is the majority of what we see. My father had hypertension, right? And it is essentially an indication of vascular dysregulation. So the inside of our blood vessels, these are veins on my arm, but inside our arteries. When you're measuring blood pressure, you're really looking at the arterial pressure, not the venous pressure. So they put a stethoscope on your arm and they measure the arterial pressure in an artery that runs here in my arm. And so that is caused by dysregulation of the cells that line those arteries and don't allow them to expand and contract in a healthy manner. This is arterial dysfunction. Vascular dysfunction is what causes high blood pressure. Most of the time related to systemic inflammation in the body and linked to insulin resistance, also known as metabolic dysfunction. Insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction, almost entirely fixable with primarily diet, intentional dietary choices, and a moderate amount of exercise. You don't have to be a marathon runner. And in fact, you probably don't want to be a marathon runner because you can go too far with exercise. So yes, this is a condition that is completely fixable, but as physicians, we are not taught to talk to patients that way. We are given this sort of subtle propaganda in medical school that your patients won't make dietary change. It's too hard for them. Right. Don't even bother asking. Or if you do, spend 30 seconds and say, hey, why don't you come back the next visit? Like, increase the quality of your diet. Like, eat some healthier foods. I'll see you in a month if it gets better. That's all I'm going to say to them. Eat healthier foods. What is a patient going to do with that? Go for a walk around your neighborhood, eat healthier foods. I'll see you in a month. Not surprisingly, in a month, their blood pressure is the same or worse, right? Yeah. So we're never given any reasonable tools in medical school. And before I went to medical school, I worked as a physician assistant in cardiology. So I've dealt with a lot of people with high blood pressure, even before my residency after medical school. And it's always the same story, right? It's much easier to say, here's an ACE inhibitor, here's a calcium channel blocker, here's a beta blocker, here's a medication. I know that's going to lower your blood pressure. And my really only job as a physician is to fix the thing that I am charged with, which is your blood pressure. I don't have any responsibility for really downstream side effects that might occur from this if they're dealing with your endocrine system or that. Then I'm going to refer you to someone else and say, well, I did the right thing, right, quote unquote. I did what my governing bodies in medicine have told me to do. I checked the box. He got a side effect. That's not my problem.
Yeah, and do you think that should one expect side effects from having high blood pressure, only taking pills? It seems like maybe that might be a reason why you're having other illnesses and disease pop up, but actually we don't talk about that. It's like, well, if I manage the symptom, then like whatever else happens is totally unrelated to said issue.
No, it's physiologic whack-a-mole, right? You can't, like if you have an imbalance in the human body, and this sounds woo-woo, but it's really not. Like if you have an imbalance in the human body, you simply cannot whack this mole without 3 more popping up. It's very difficult to give someone a medication for any condition and not have something else happen because of it. You give someone a proton pump inhibitor because they have gastroesophageal reflux, right? Well, then you have an increased rate of pneumonia because of side effects. Then you have malabsorption of multiple nutrients, including B12 and other things that are dependent on the acidity of your stomach. So you have all of these downstream side effects because the problem really wasn't that they had a deficiency of a proton pump inhibitor. This isn't a pharmaceutical medication deficiency. This is an imbalance. It's a signal to us as physicians or as patients, quote unquote, that there's an imbalance in your body. In the case of gastroesophageal reflux, it usually has to do with dysbiosis in the gut at some level, whether it's the small intestine or some part of this that's leading to a reflux and dysfunction of the esophageal sphincter. If you can get at the root of that and correct that with dietary change, lifestyle change, you probably don't need a proton pump inhibitor. And it's just the story being played out over and over and over in Western medicine. It's so sad, and it really forsakes so many people.
Yeah, it's really sad. And I think what's interesting about what you do is that, you'll look at these randomized controlled studies and say, let me show you not only why this isn't true, but how to look at studies. And so like you had one where you were looking at seed oils in humans. Maybe it was the same guy, but you were saying, here's all the reasons why this study that everything is referencing, turtles all the way down to this study, is actually problematic. And I think that would be interesting for people to hear. Like, how do you determine, no, my doctor says this study, and why is it that doctors don't take the next step, which is go, hey, this study isn't actually well
executed?
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, as physicians, we can talk about that with seed oils because that's a really important point. But as physicians, most of us work in an insurance model, which doesn't pay us for outcomes, it pays us for time.
Yeah.
And so if we are not seeing 4 to 5 to 6 patients an hour, it's very difficult to even pay your malpractice insurance or make a profit and support your, you know, like, so there's a real financial constraint on physicians very quickly. You know that in medical school, the specialties that pay more are more prestigious and they're more competitive. If you want to be a dermatologist, if you want to be an orthopedic surgeon, if you want to be a plastic surgeon, those are the people who do the best in medical school because they make the most money, right? The people that make the least money in medicine, those are the least competitive specialties. So medicine is completely based on a financial model, and the motivations in medical school are to do as good as I can so I can make as much money. And look, everyone that goes to medical school is super smart and worked really hard to get there. But there's, even within medical school, there is a ranking of specialties. And so I have tons and tons of respect for people that work in internal medicine and family practice, but those specialties don't pay a ton of money, and they're doing really good work that people need to receive. And it's very difficult for a doctor to look at the methods and the history of any study that they're basing their decisions on. It's so much easier as a physician to just say, this is what I learned in medical school. This is what everyone else does. I am protected from malpractice liability if I do this thing, which is what are the guidelines. I'm going to do that thing. So in the case of this seed oil study, or multiple of the randomized controlled trials looking at seed oils, these are nutrition studies essentially, and there are some single-blind, some double-blind randomized controlled trials done with seed oils. Most of them were done, in fact, all of them were done really between the late 1950s and the early 1970s. So they're all 50 to 70 years old. We haven't had a randomized controlled trial with seed oils in 50 to 70 years. No one has done these studies. So we are looking at methods, we are looking at nutritional knowledge that is 50 to 70 years old when these studies were designed.
Why?
Because there's no funding. What pharmaceutical company stands to benefit from doing a trial comparing saturated fats and soybean oil today? None.
Wow.
So much of what we see in the medical literature, so much of what we're taught in medical school is pharma-funded research. That's all that's done today. That's the majority, right? It's not all, but it's the vast majority. And there's a zeitgeist. There is an accepted sort of network saying, you can't even ask this question now. With your grant, you know, your proposal will just be laughed at. Everyone knows, Cody, quote unquote, that saturated fat is bad for humans. You can't even propose a study that's using saturated fat in one of the arms of the study today without getting a lot of pushback. Maybe you could get it through an IRB, but there's become so much groupthink. And I think that's going to change with this administration and maybe overhaul at the level of the NIH. But there are certainly questions that have been omerta, that have been unable to be asked in the last 15 to 20 years of research. It's very hard to do any research today that questions the lipid hypothesis, which is again something we can talk about regarding LDL cholesterol and direct connections of heart disease. That idea is so entrenched that if you propose a study to question that, it's going to be pretty hard to get this approved. So if you wanted to do a randomized controlled trial with seed oils in humans, that's not observational. You're looking at 5 to 7 years with 300 to 500 patients, maybe to start. 1,000 would be better. You're looking at $20 to $50 million to fund that study. Who's going to push that bill? Like
nobody.
No, like the Butter Association isn't, and if the butter, there's no Butter Association, right? But like if the National Tallow Association funds it, there's going to be so many cries it's corrupt, right? So, you know, agriculture can't fund it. A seed oil company wouldn't. Why would they fund it, right? Why would Kraft or Procter & Gamble or Bunge, which is a company that makes seed oils, why would they fund that study if it could potentially make seed oils look bad? And a study like that, if it were done, that would erode the foundation of so many of the foods that we are given in the grocery store so profoundly that it would probably cause a collapse of our food system for a short amount of time. If RFK Jr. is able to actually get meaningful legislation or meaningful scientific decision-making done on seed oils, think about how many foods in the grocery store are going to have to be labeled differently. That is a multi-billion-dollar, potentially hundreds of billions of dollars are on the line here. There's a lot on the line with this, with seed oils. So there's a lot to be protected there in terms of the conceptualization by the public that Doritos, as long as I don't eat too many, maybe it's not the biggest problem. When the flip side of that coin is, look, we live in a free society. You can do what you want. You're sovereign, but that's freaking poison. And if you like eating Doritos, like you need to understand that's poisonous for you. We're allowed to do things that are poisonous for us. We're allowed to drink alcohol. You know, we're allowed to do a lot of things that are poisonous, to take risks, to smoke cigarettes. But hopefully we can get some real honest conversation and maybe even some studies that need to be done to help people understand that like that is poison. Do what you want, but don't give it to your kids thinking that it's okay. So it's a really tricky, it's like a Gordian knot. It's really difficult to untie all of this.
Yeah. Well, and what's crazy, I think, is like, for instance, and we'll blur this out because this is a buddy's company and we like the buddy, but I had no idea until I saw another video that you did about aluminum cans. I was like, I'm doing so good. I don't drink plastic. Of course I don't, because that would be bad. And people say microplastics are not good. So I have my nice little aluminum can. But talk to me about what is inside here, because it turns out maybe this isn't such a good idea.
It's not ideal, right? So you're still drinking out of a plastic bottle, drinking out of an aluminum can. There's really clear videos that have been done where they take acid, a sulfuric acid, and you can dissolve the aluminum. And what you end up with is a plastic bag. It looks like a condom.
Yeah, you can kind of twist the plastic inside of it.
You can twist the plastic or you can completely dissolve it. There's a plastic bag in your aluminum can, invariably. You cannot put any liquid in an aluminum can like that because the aluminum will leach into the fluid. And we know that you probably shouldn't be drinking aluminum. Yeah. You know, you shouldn't be wrapping your food in aluminum foil for the same reason. We don't want the aluminum touching food. There's potentially problems with excess aluminum in our diet. So what do we do, right? Everything has to be in glass. It's not really tenable in terms of weight and economies of scale, but I just think it's important for people to understand that like knowledge is power, know better, do better. And for those people that are suffering, which is really, this is the ethos of all of the content that I make now, and it's been an evolution, is like, look, if you're thriving, don't change anything. Yep. But if you're not, I want people to know that there are a lot of these inputs that they're doing in their life that could be potentially contributing in a cumulative manner. I did a video recently about these printer receipts at grocery stores. People got super triggered. But look, there's solid evidence that touching these receipts can lead to absorption of endocrine disrupting chemicals through your skin. So, like, don't hate me. Like, this is thermal paper. This is a big deal. I mean, Shanna Swan's been on Huberman's podcast talking about this. This is not pseudoscience. Now, is one receipt going to kill you? No, and I said that in the video. But people just get so triggered because they can't wrap their head around the number of things that are toxic in our environment. And I get it. We live in a pretty scary place. And so it's not about being perfect. It's just about doing better. And what I'm about is kind of hope for people. I've met so many people over the years in medical school, in my training, working as a PA, working as a physician, who end up at a place of despair because they're sick and no doctor they see gives them any idea that there's a way out. All you can do is take this medication, which we know has side effects. So that's incredible to me. If you don't have a way out, what are you supposed to do? You might as well you're going to live the rest of your life with a lower quality of life than you could possibly have. That's wild. That's horrible. But I want people to know that there are so many ways out that they may not have heard about. That's what I just want to put it out there. Tools for people when you're ready. If you're doing great, drink out of cans. Who cares? Yep. Touch your receipts. Okay, fine. But if you have hormonal dysfunction, infertility, low libido, obesity, depression, like some of these inputs, they matter in a cumulative way. And being intentional with little steps can make a big difference over time.
It's so true. I mean, for instance, I have a lot of girlfriends, now I'm a little bit older, who are struggling with infertility. And, you know, it always bothered me that the story about reproductive rights was always one-sided. It was like reproductive rights are, you know, abortion rights. And I think you should believe whatever you want to believe about that. Right. But I want the other side of the coin too. Reproductive rights are also, why is it harder for women to get pregnant seemingly? And why is nobody talking about that? So maybe along that same vein, I hear Paul Saladino will not date a woman who wears lotion, perfume, or Lululemon. Is this true?
It's pretty true.
It's pretty true.
Or if she's amazing, I'm going to try and convince her not to do those things. Like,
okay, so let's talk about it. So what's the deal with lotion, perfume, Lululemon, and women?
So let's do lotion and perfume first. Okay. These are cosmetics, but all cosmetics, anything that we're putting on our skin, whether we're a man or a woman, is being absorbed. Mm-hmm. Skin is, and it's not a lipid, you know, impermeable barrier. It's not a water impermeable barrier. a lot of things you put on your skin can be absorbed. We know this, and this is the problem. That we are porous, right? We have pores. This is how we sweat, and pheromones come out, and we regulate fluids in our body. We are full of holes. We just can't see them. So anything you put on your skin is going into your body and being absorbed into the cells at your dermis and epidermis. So there have been interesting studies looking at women specifically in the study and cosmetics and personal care products, whether it's deodorant or lotions, and women who make a change and remove the personal care products that have parabens and phthalates and other endocrine disruptors. A lot of the stuff around forever chemicals is not noted on labels, so it's subtle. But women who make an intentional change to remove those things, we see noticeable, marked, statistically significant decreases in levels of these compounds in their body within a few days.
Wow.
We're talking like the levels can go down by 50%. So there's a massive input. And these are not things that occur naturally in our bodies, right? These are BPS, BPA, parabens, phthalates, which have many iterations and incarnations.
And why are those bad? Why don't we want them in us?
Because they look like our hormones, right? They're imposters. And so they mimic, a lot of them mimic estrogen specifically. So they can mimic estrogen at the receptor and block its action. They can stimulate excess estrogen action. They're disrupting our hormones. We are delicate, right? And we're resilient, but we're also delicate, right? Yeah. So like humans have never been in contact with these chemicals. There are things in, quote, nature that affect us in certain ways, but these are just new things for us. Maybe in another 1,000,000 years, I don't know if Homo sapiens will last that long, or 300,000 years, our bodies will adapt to these compounds, but they're not very adapted now. These compounds have only been in our sphere of existence for the last 50, 30, 20, 10, 5 years.
Yep.
That's way too quickly for our bodies to adjust. Who knows if we ever will. So now they're just this new piece of information that our bodies are unaware of. And it really can cause problems for humans in terms of, like you said, fertility, all sorts of hormonal things in women and men.
Yeah. You know what's interesting too is, have you seen the new trend with young girls where young girls are starting to put on cosmetics and skincare products younger than ever?
Wow.
And so if you look at actually the growth in the cosmetic industry in female cosmetic products, the #1 growth is sub 16 years old. So we are having we are having salicylic acid and night and eye cream for 12 and 11-year-old girls.
Wow.
Who do not need it, by the way, whatsoever, of course.
Right.
And so fast, with such high margins, that they also are creating these little, they're like refrigerators for little girls. And I swear to God, you can look it up and see if there's a video here for you. But there's these little refrigerators that they put on top of the girls' countertops that you put all of your face products in.
Okay.
And this is a new trend for them. And there's starting to be these side effects for young women where, not young women, young girls, where salicylic acid on like a face that doesn't have acne, I mean, you're not really getting acne when you're 8, 9, 10, 11. And so it's interesting to see. I can't even imagine what's going to happen to the next generation, because I didn't start all that until I was in my 20s, probably.
Wow.
You know?
It's scary.
Yeah, I think so too.
And you look at young girls hitting puberty earlier and earlier. You know, there are all of these compounds in our environment that are affecting us negatively. You also asked about Lululemon.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, I just saw an article a couple of weeks ago about whether it's a sports bra or leggings. When you sweat in these, it increases the absorption of chemicals in these pieces of clothing significantly.
Yeah.
If you're wearing leggings and they're dry, it doesn't look like we absorb much from it, right?
Yeah.
Women don't absorb much from the leggings. But women, most of the time, this is athleisure. They're like going to the gym after
or me in the sauna.
Right, you're in the sauna or you're running. So a lot of times, women especially, men don't wear as many of these like tight products on our bodies. We can sometimes. Men in jiu-jitsu wear these rash guards, right, which are kind of the same thing as like a sports bra in some ways, right? It's a polyester piece of clothing that adheres to our body, and we get super sweaty in it. So men are not immune from this, but generally we're thinking of women wearing leggings and sports bras, sweating in them. There is like documented research evidence that increases the absorption of endocrine disrupting chemicals, again, BPS, BPA, which is a whole bisphenol series, parabens and phthalates, into the body. And then what does it do? We're just now beginning to understand this.
Wow. Yeah, plus, have you seen women's leggings lately? They are everywhere. They're very tight. I collective, Taylor's gonna laugh. Like, there's these new leggings that you just see. I'm like, I'm a chick and I'm looking. I'm sorry. Like, they are up in everything. So what do? You throw your expensive leggings away? You buy only cotton ones? What's the answer here?
I mean, it's just like knowledge is power. Know better, do better. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. If you're thriving, maybe that's not the biggest input, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the biggest lever to pull. If I'm in that situation, I'm thinking, okay, somebody needs to start developing leggings and sports bras in better fabrics. This is a business opportunity for a whole growing segment of men and women. If it's men, if it's rash guards, right? For me, like, I'm a surfer. There are 0 companies that make board shorts out of anything but polyester. And believe me, I've tried to surf in cotton shorts. It doesn't work very well. It's horrible, right?
Yeah.
There was a company, Kelly Slater's company, used to make wool board shorts, and they discontinued them. So hopefully, by education, there can be an increased awareness and demand for these products in the market, and it's a new space. I've seen women starting to wear leggings that are cotton, or look, if it's 5% spandex but mostly cotton, that's way better than 100% polyester.
Yeah.
Way better.
Yeah.
Also, underwears for women. What is your underwear made out of?
I did the whole organic cotton switch.
It's probably important.
Yeah.
Like, these tissues that are covered by sports bras and underwear are very absorptive. They're mucosal tissues. So it's a big deal.
Okay, really important comment. The thing is, I haven't met that many super hippie women that age super well. It's like there's a lot of wrinkles. Oh, maybe that's why.
It's because they're all vegetarians.
My husband's really funny. He'll be like, you don't need Botox. I'm like, you never see me without it. Like, you have no idea. You don't know what I look like if I never get Botox, because I've had it before. Don't tell me it's bad for me. I don't even want to know.
We can talk about it. It's a separate conversation.
Okay, fine. But, like, what do you think about this, aesthetic we have today, at least for women? It looks a certain way, and it's really hard to get products that are healthy on your face.
So again, this is just my perspective as a man.
You're not doing Botox.
I don't do Botox. I've never done Botox. I've never really done anything cosmetic for my face, and people will be like, "Yeah, that's because your face. That's why you look old." Whatever.
You look old. You look great. Internet's rude.
Thank you. Whatever. People will use that as an opportunity, I'm sure, to hate. But, like, I don't want to put chemicals on my face. I refuse to do it. And in terms of the Botox, I'll just say this: like, as a man, I have trouble dating women whose foreheads don't move.
Look at this.
Because
I'm perplexed. I'm upset. I can't lift an eyebrow. Is it working?
I mean,
you want to see it. You want to see the wrinkles.
There are 200 plus. People can fact check me on this. Maybe I'm off a little bit. There are many, many muscles in the human face, and I think that we've evolved this very delicate communication between men and women, but also between women and their children and men and their children, whereby our expressions, like, this is so much communication in the way that I move my face beyond the intonation of my words.
That's true.
So I can be on a date with a woman and think, like, there's nothing coming back at me, right? Like, I have no idea what's going on here. How are we going to form a partnership? And I actually have concerns, and there is a hypothesis that women with too much Botox could potentially impair pair bonding with their children. Oof. Because the infant is not seeing the woman's face move. You remember during COVID when everyone was wearing the masks and so many kids were sort of delayed in terms of their social skills? Botox is kind of the same thing, but with the top half of the face, or with the forehead and with around the eyes.
Yeah, I don't do the eyes, but now they have these new silicone strips. This is really, I'm sure, important to you that that you can put on here instead. That's supposed to help with the lines. But yeah, you can be pretty vain watching yourself on TV all the time as a woman. Also, I think we did a series that, like, opened up my eyes. I mean, if you think about my generation, I'm 38, and we went through. Let's see, what did we go through? We went through heroin chic, remember that? Like Kate Moss, so like as skinny as humanly possible.
I didn't know what it's called, okay.
Now you do. Add that to your repertoire. You tell me about crazy, like, multi-syllable words in medicine. I'll teach you about heroin chic.
Okay, heroin chic, Paul. Let's go.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
So we got heroin chic back in the day. That was where we were told be as skinny as humanly possible. That's sexy, right? And then we went from that to actually expanded bodies, so like the big, Kim Kardashian butts, the puffer fit lish, the silicone, chest. Then we've most recently gone to, releasing all of those. So now we want to release the fillers. We want to have a more natural look. And so in my lifespan, which is like 20 years of being cognizant of these things, we've had 3 materially different body types as a woman. And so imagine that. These young women these days are thinking that they actually have to change their body composition in order to fit a beauty norm. How scary.
It's so hard. I have a younger sister, so I'm a little bit aware of this because I always felt for her having to go through these beauty norms, and I think that she's navigated it very well and very gracefully. But I think in many ways, I think that it's got to be very, very difficult as a woman to navigate that today, whether it's dating or marriage, and especially a woman who is in the public eye, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a man, I'm a 47-year-old man, and I still get self-conscious about being in the public eye, and I've just kind of released it and been like, look,
Same.
this is what I'm about. Like, I'm trying to do the best I can and be authentic about the way I look as a 47-year-old man. I take care of myself, but it's hard, right? And I think it comes back even more on women because there are such different, I would say, impossible beauty standards.
Yeah, well, and also there's like financial reasons for why women care about it. Like we have quote unquote pretty privilege, and I should check my validity of my studies, but there's quite a few studies that show that women who wear makeup have a double digit, and we won't get that specific about the numbers, but somewhere between 15 and 30% increase in pay just from wearing makeup versus not, all things else being relatively equal.
That's crazy.
So you can kind of see why you might start paying more attention to the way that you look and dress.
Of course. Well,
which makes a lot of sense.
You have to keep up. It's like, I'm reminded of Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France. If everyone is doing steroids, if everyone is doing EPO, erythropoietin, if everyone is doing drugs in your sport, you have to do that to even be seen as like competitive. And so in the marketplace, or it's a hard thing for women because if men on the other end, and I always wonder how much of these beauty standards are women doing it for other women versus women.
Probably the most.
Versus women doing it for men. But if men are seeing this, our perspective on this is being warped, or other women, who want to date women, right? So like whatever prospective partner you want, their perspective of what someone attractive is being warped again by social media and these crazy norms that are happening. AI is not helping that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Truth. You don't use deodorant, toothpaste, no lotion, no cologne, and you use beef fat as sunscreen.
Mostly truth, yeah. So I don't use deodorant, generally speaking. If I'm going somewhere and have to be super professional and I don't, want to have any scent, I might use apple cider vinegar or rubbing alcohol, but I don't use any traditional.
You just rub it underneath?
Yeah, you just spray it or rub it underneath.
Are you smelly?
I don't think so. But I smell like a human.
You smell like a human.
Yeah. I mean, like,
he smells lovely.
Could I potentially...
Okay, ready?
Let's go.
No, you actually smell totally normal. No deodorant.
No deodorant.
And you're sweating.
I'm sweating. I'm sitting
the day?
here. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that a lot of...
Codie approved.
Okay, wow. That was a tense moment there. You're like,
could have gone sideways.
And I don't use toothpaste. Again, this is one of the things that I get a lot of flack for.
No toothpaste.
Toothpaste is just silly. Like, look, first of all, I'm not a fan of fluoride. And there's a lot of fluoride in toothpaste. And there's a lot of fluoride in drinking water, et cetera, et cetera. So please filter your water with a filter that actually gets fluoride out. You don't need fluoride in your toothpaste. When I was a kid, I had these fluoride trays that they used to put in my mouth at the dentist. I shudder to think about this. Anyway, you don't need fluoride in your toothpaste. And there are natural toothpastes that don't use fluoride, but then they have things like SDS, sodium dodecyl sulfate, or diatomaceous earth, things that could even be, SDS could be disruptive to the gut flora. Sometimes diatomaceous earth or other ingredients are too abrasive for the enamel of our teeth.
Isn't that like what murders little insects
that you
put in plants and stuff?
Yeah. And maybe diatomaceous earth isn't in toothpaste anymore, but sometimes they use things that are abrasive. People used to brush their teeth with baking soda.
Yeah.
This is not a good idea, right? It's way too abrasive for the enamel. So our mouth is like a reflection of our gut flora, right? And if you have bad breath, it's not that you're not brushing your teeth with toothpaste, it's that you have dysbiosis in your gut, right? So it all comes back to quality of food. I remember this time when I was in PA school, so my late 20s, I was going out on a date with a woman and I used to love Listerine. I was like, this is the greatest stuff ever. And I left the house and my dad was like, he just said, what? I can smell it, it's too much. And I was like, no, it's good, it's good. I used to just crush the mouthwash, but now we know that mouthwash, it kills all of the flora in your mouth, which are essential for the production of nitric oxide. There are studies in people who are working out in the gym that when they use mouthwash, it actually attenuates how much muscle they can gain. It affects the quality and the improvement in your physiology when you do workouts by using mouthwash. So you don't want to carpet bomb your microbiome in your mouth, in your gut. we need these bacteria, and we cannot sterilize ourselves. We cannot. Look, if you go to the bathroom, wash your hands, fine. But understand that there are endocrine disruptors, potentially microbiota disrupting chemicals in many of the soaps we use. And so I don't see the point to using soap on my skin. I'm not literally swimming in mud all day. I'm okay, you know?
So no washing hands with soap after going to the bathroom?
Well, what's in the soap, right?
Yeah.
Is it fragrance? Is it paraben? Is it phthalate? Is it triclosan, which is, I think, pretty problematic for the human gut microbiota. Okay. So if you want to use like a natural soap after you go to the bathroom, okay, but know what's in it, right? And so many of these fragrances and parabens and phthalates are problematic.
So just water?
Water most of the time, yeah. And
what about like tallow body soap?
Tallow body soap would be much better.
Better. Okay.
Much better, yeah. And again, like, I think that as humans, we are worried about what other people will think. We don't want to smell. We don't want to smell a certain way. We don't want our breath to be bad. And so much of this comes back to the quality of just the way we live our lives, right? What is the quality of the food you're eating? That's when you get bad breath if you're not eating that well. So that's the issue here. And I think that there are ways to make healthier toothpaste, but again, it's kind of based on this fear around, if I don't brush my teeth, my breath will be bad. And that's not really what happens. Like, humans have a natural smell, which probably is attractive to people.
I mean,
the other question is, do you want to, we probably cannot cover our pheromones, but we probably don't want to cover our pheromones for our partners, for potential partners, more than like at all. Like, we want people to smell us as humans. That's a connection that we have with other people. And this is all completely against the societal norm, and so it's very controversial, but I want people I'm on a date with to be able to smell my pheromones as a human. We can talk about birth control too. There's so many
rabbit. Now smelled your pheromones.
What's that?
So I said, now I've smelled your pheromones.
You smell my pheromones.
We're on the same page. Okay.
You can, and you know, like, if you're on a date with someone or you're dating someone, you want to know if there is genetic compatibility there.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And that is affected by our pheromones and these signals. And though there hasn't been much research into human pheromones, the evidence is so overwhelming that they're there, just anecdotally or observationally. Humans have pheromones. All other mammals produce pheromones. Why would humans not produce pheromones? Have you seen the studies on birth control? This is relevant. So women who take birth control select different partners when they're presented with sweaty t-shirts. So they've actually, speaking of who funds these studies, like, look, maybe there's hope for seed oil studies, because somebody funded a study where women on birth control were given sweaty t-shirts from men, and they knew sort of the immunologic signature of the men in the t-shirts. And women on the birth control selected different mates in terms of compatibility with their genetics than women off birth control. So what happens is that women on birth control select men who have more similar genetics. Women off birth control select men with different genetics, mostly at this MHC antigen locus in the immune system. In nature, mates are generally chosen based on genetic diversity. You want someone with different genetics than you, so you have the most robust offspring in terms of mate pairing, right? And you can see in populations that have a lot of inbreeding that people generally have more diseases and become less robust quickly. This happens in a lot of populations. You get these rare diseases that are amplified that shouldn't happen. We want diversity in terms of human mating and combinations of genetics. And so women on birth control are kind of choosing the wrong partners.
It's so scary.
And it begs the question of women on birth control choosing a partner, getting off birth control, getting pregnant, and then how many relationships does that end or cause problems with when you're actually not that compatible with your partner now and you've had a child with them or you're pregnant with them?
That's
so
wild.
In terms of choosing a partner, pretty important to know these things and sample these things. There's another study that I'll mention which is really wild on the same topic. They looked at strippers. And there are strippers on birth control and strippers off birth control. And when the strippers off birth control are performing, they earn the most tips right around their ovulation. They have a huge peak in the month when they ovulate. And the rest of the month is like less tips, right? The women on birth control earned the same amount of tips all month, and it was much lower. So if there are any strippers listening to the podcast,
big audience,
and you want to make more money, you got to get off birth control. But clearly men know, right? And men are paying women more when they're ovulating. There's something going on here. They're communicating. And being on birth control abolishes that. So like making mate pairing more difficult, birth control, pheromones, smelling, that's how we got on this topic, from like soaps and perfumes and all these things.
Fascinating. So let's say that you buy into it and you're like, okay, I want to decrease a bunch of these endocrine disrupting extra things that we do. What do you do so that you can still sort of manage through society? Is it tallow soap? Is it shaving your armpits if you're a man? Is it eating certain types of food? How do we not be smelly and also be healthier?
So again, the option, it's pretty simple, right? There's like rubbing alcohol, apple cider vinegar. There are more natural deodorants now that have no parabens and phthalates. There are more natural toothpaste. If you absolutely want the minty fresh feel in your mouth, which whatever, do you know, like there's options. And I think that it's avoiding the lesser options, avoiding the ones that are going to be problematic in a cumulative fashion, because there's a lot of things that we're putting on our body and in our mouths that are not even food. We haven't even talked about food yet, right? So yeah, there's so many better options today. Again, there's probably a niche for food or for clothing companies to make better quality clothing, but you don't have to be completely, living in the jungle in Costa Rica like me.
Well, you told me about, what is it? Is it Seed Oil Tracker or Seed Oil Scout?
Seed Oil Scout.
Seed Oil Scout, which is cool. So you can go to restaurants and try to find restaurants that don't use seed oils.
Yes, the guy that did that app is coming to the film premiere tonight.
Amazing.
Yep. So Heart and Soil is doing a premiere of a mini documentary that I did with them. It's called Fed a Lie, and it's about seed oils. And that's tonight, and he's coming to that. So you can meet him. Yeah, it's awesome. So when you go to restaurants, again, it's the overarching framework that I keep coming back to is that convenience is the enemy of health. If we just do what everyone else does, we get what everyone else gets. And most of the people in our sphere, unfortunately, are going to have health issues or chronic disease or infertility issues. And if we want to live a life that is different than that, we have to be intentional and swim upstream. And that means inconveniences, whether it's inconvenience of cooking your food ahead of time or the inconvenience of going to a restaurant and being that guy or that girl that asks the waiter, what is this cooked in? Or looking at the menu beforehand and thinking, do they have something that is unlikely to be cooked in seed oils? Sauces, these things are almost invariably full of vegetable oils, seed oils.
Yeah, I mean, because of you, actually, I listened to a podcast you did with somebody else, and you laid out this framework, and then I thought, well, this will be fun. I just want to go for a week and ask all of the different restaurants that I go to, nice restaurants, expensive restaurants, what sort of oil they cook in, and it just said, I have some allergies, which is true. I have allergies to some things. It doesn't happen to be those, but then I feel like they might have to tell me. And I can only find 2 restaurants here that only use olive oil.
Daidue?
Daidue and The Well.
Really?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about seed oils earlier. I think seed oils are problematic for humans when they're sitting on the shelf. What happens to a seed oil when you heat it? So now you're heating it again. It becomes even more highly rancid and oxidized and processed when you heat it. So one of the worst things is French fries, right? That is a fryer. You're boiling the oil for days at a time. I went to a KFC and an In-N-Out recently to do content, and I asked them, how often do you change the fryer oil, which is peanut and soybean oil? They say once a week. Once a week? You have a seed oil to start with, which is highly rancid and oxidized, and then you're boiling it for 12 to 16 hours a day, and you're changing it once a week? Are you kidding me? So
we're going to have to save the new administration, because did you see the new picture of them with RFK held hostage on the plane with McDonald's?
I was so disappointed.
I mean, I have to they're the ultimate trolls. It's like the best entertainment of all time.
Do you think they were trolling?
I think RFK probably was like, yeah, what are we going to do? But I think that they are brilliant at it. But I thought it was interesting because I looked at one of your other posts about the number of ingredients that just McDonald's pickles have in them. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's like, what is it, like 19? 19 in French fries. I think pickles had 5 to 7 ingredients.
Yeah, I think it was 10.
Yeah.
Which is like, how is that even possible with the pickle? You would think a pickle was just vinegar and salt and a pickle, right?
And a cucumber.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Is that how they make those? Right, a cucumber.
So I'm super excited for RFK Jr., super disappointed he was in the photo with the McDonald's, but super excited for his overhaul of the FDA, so the Food and Drug Administration.
Yeah.
This has to do with this generally recognized as self or the GRAS designation on foods. I think in the United States, we don't even know how many chemicals are in our food supply now. People estimate 5,000 to 10,000. chemicals that are part of this GRAS system. So these are chemicals that are supposed to have been tested for humans' safety and are generally not, because there is a process of grandfathering these chemicals in over the last 20 to 30 years where companies can just say, oh yeah, we tested it, we're just going to say it's safe. And the FDA is allowing this to happen. And one of the really interesting juxtapositions that's been highlighted recently by a number of awesome people in the health space is the difference in European foods versus American foods. In Europe, there are maybe 400 to 500 of these chemicals. In the United States, there are 5,000 to 10,000. We don't even know how many there are. And these have all come in maybe the last 15 to 20 years. So how many chemicals are in our food supply that are problematic for us long term that we don't even know about? And these are not vitamins and minerals. These are additives. Sodium pyrophosphate, sodium benzoate, ready? Preservatives, TBHQ. Who knows? Like dimethylpolysiloxane, which is an ingredient in silly putty, which is in McDonald's French fries. Right? Like these are dyes, red 40, yellow 6, yellow 5, blue 5, right? We don't know what these do to humans long term. There have been some studies, but it's wild to think about. I think this is a huge part of the problem for humans, is that when you eat an ultra-processed food, whether it's Flamin' Hot Cheetos or Takis or this other Franken foods that I see at the grocery store, there are tons of these things in there, and they're accepted as safe. Kellogg's is saying that Red 40 is safe. I mean, a bunch of people marched to Kellogg's headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan, and Kellogg's didn't even let them in the door. Kellogg's said, no, the FDA says our food is safe. When there are multiple studies in kids showing that these food dyes can potentially be linked to either allergic conditions or behavioral problems. And the same could be true of so many ingredients that we're not even thinking about in your ultra-processed food of choice. We don't know what these things do to us as humans.
Well, and also I think humans are incredible at self-rationalization. So like those people that are in Kellogg's and in Pfizer, they're not evil demons trying to take over the world, most likely. But could be. But I think most people were great self-rationalizers. And so if we explain that, hey, urban populations have food deserts, hey, this is a core constituency for most people who are of sub-economic level, thus without us, they can't actually eat, then we will explain our way into really bad practices as humans. And I think that's what we have to watch out for.
I mean, have you heard Callie Means talk about this when he worked at Coca-Cola and these other businesses, that if there was any suggestion of regulation, that they would use a race card or a financial hardship card, and they would not allow the regulation. Like it is that's racist to say that these junk foods, which are more affordable, are unhealthy. How are lower income populations going to be able to afford their food? Yeah. There is so much sort of maneuvering on the back end to protect these ultra processed foods, which have huge margins and are easy to make, and continue to support their availability for us as Americans. And look, it's a Pandora's box. They're already created. I think humans should have the ability to choose to eat those foods. I just think we need honest, candid conversations about what these things can be doing to us as humans. A cigarette package has a warning label on it. And in other parts of the world, the warning labels are much more graphic than they are in the United States. I've seen cigarettes in New Zealand and other places when I've traveled, and they have pictures of people with with like trach tubes who can't breathe, or on ventilators. They have pictures of people on dialysis or with plastic surgery need in their face because they've had so much cancer in their nose and mouth from chewing tobacco. In the United States, we have a little warning in words. They don't have any pictures. But why don't we have warning labels on Lay's potato chips and Doritos? And there's no question at this point that those foods are harming humans. Yeah. In many ways, and in kind with cigarettes. Like every time I make any sort of comparison to cigarettes, the nutrition mob comes after me and says, Paul Saladino is claiming that Doritos are worse than cigarettes. Like, this is crazy, right? It's like, get over yourself, guys. I'm not saying that, but Doritos are not health food. And cigarettes are an interesting juxtaposition. Cigarettes have a warning label. Why don't Doritos?
Yeah, I agree. Well, and the other thing that's interesting is, like, my father is a perfect example. It's hard for other generations to get on board with this. I'll talk to him often about, like, hey, let's, I saw your post on shredded cheese, American cheese, and trying to explain this to a different generation is very hard. So I think that the work's really important because we need to push back with some graphic illustrations. Like that canola oil video of the sludge getting made. You're like, I don't know much, not healthy. I can just tell. Not a good idea. That's it.
We have an intuition.
Right. Yeah, which is true. But as we kill our microbiome, the intuition becomes harder. So I think it's very, very true.
Yeah, and as, I mean, this is mirroring the conversation around beauty standards in humans. As the conversation gets diluted and confused, which I think is the main tactic that a lot of these manufacturers are trying to do, what is healthy and unhealthy becomes more blurred, and unhealthy food becomes more normalized. And we lose our intuition. A blue potato chip, right? Unless it's blue corn, which, you know, corn is a separate conversation, but like a blue potato chip with food dyes, this is probably, I think our grandparents will be able to look at that and think that's a frankenfood. You know, we're only a few generations removed from that level of intuition, but at a very simple level when it comes to food, if your grandmother didn't recognize this food, why are you eating it?
That's such a good point.
You just don't need to eat it. And if your grandmother's mother didn't, like that, a few generations back, we were so much better, even without any conversations around more nuanced of like meat versus plants, like just what are the foods that were in our food supply 100 years ago? They're not like what we eat today.
Let's talk really quick about what you eat, because you have a unique method for eating that includes like a more limited food supply. Will you talk about the foods you will put in your body?
Yeah. So I have a history of autoimmune illness. I had pretty bad eczema and asthma as a kid. Both of my parents are in the medical system. My dad is a doctor, my mom is a nurse practitioner, so I got over-medicated as a kid. They did the best they could. They didn't know. My dad wasn't trained either when he went to medical school at Georgetown University about foods.
So you think that you got those because of over-medication when you were younger?
No, I just know that I had those for whatever reason, a genetic predisposition in the setting, in the context of eating standard American diet, manifests those things, and I was over-medicated as a kid.
Yeah,
so I grew up with a lot of medications. That didn't affect me positively either. Giving your kid lots of antibiotics can affect their gut flora, right? Giving your kid lots of stimulants to treat their asthma, because we used to give children theophylline called Theodor. I got this in my applesauce when I was a kid. It makes kids anxious and hyperactive. So that doesn't help with elementary school performance or learning. So these things negatively affected my life, and it was this sort of domino effect. So at some point in my life, generally when I was out of college, I began to think about my food and started thinking about what I was doing with my food that was giving me this autoimmune condition, this series of autoimmune conditions. Really, it's a triad. It's called an atopic condition, right? It's basically eczema, asthma, and allergies. And it got to the point that it was bothersome to me. And I had numerous flares of my eczema that were very severe, requiring more systemic steroids, which are not great for anything. And at times in medical school, the eczema would get infected and I would get impetigo. So like from being on the mats for jiu-jitsu, so really impairing my quality of life, spurred me to think more specifically and intentionally about the foods that I was eating. Now, that has been a personal journey that I've written about and talked about on my social media. It began originally with a vegan diet many years ago, a raw vegan diet, which didn't do much for my autoimmune conditions, but I did lose 20 plus pounds of lean muscle to the point that I got super, super skinny. I'm about 165 pounds now. I was less than 145 at that time. And that was not intentional. I was eating as much as I possibly could, but without animal protein, the muscle goes away. In my case, and in many others as well. So that was a raw vegan diet. Then I sort of did paleo, and a paleo diet of meat and vegetables and nuts and seeds didn't fix the eczema. And I got to the point where I was thinking, in my residency at the University of Washington after medical school, I have really bad eczema right now, and I'm eating 85 to 90% organic foods that are colloquially considered to be healthy. No processed food. What is going on? There's something in my diet that is still triggering my immune system. That was when I did a carnivore diet, so strictly meat. And that was interesting because it fixes the eczema. Then fast forward a year and a half later, I end up with some issues regarding electrolyte balance due to long-term ketogenic diet. And so I started to add foods back in, which is the ultimate goal, I think, for a lot of people if they do elimination diets like a carnivore diet. And first I added in honey, then I added in fruit, and I found a pretty interesting middle ground, kind of carnivore 2.0, which I've called animal-based, just as a framework for people in hopes that it's healthy. I don't think everyone needs to eat this way, but I think it's a good starting point for people. And so an animal-based diet is basically meat and fruit. But a lot of foods we think of as fruit, a lot of foods we think of as vegetables are actually fruit, things like avocado or cucumber or squash. So the reason I make the distinction between fruit and vegetables is that one of the interesting things about thinking about food that we eat from a carnivore lens was that there actually are defense chemicals in vegetables. And some of these can be detoxified when we cook them or when we ferment them, but not all of them. And a lot of people with autoimmune conditions do feel better when they eliminate some or all vegetables. Not everyone needs to. Again, if you're thriving, don't change anything about your diet. But I like this idea of putting tools into the world for people that they can access if and when they need them. So for me, I know from adding foods back that a lot of the vegetables actually do trigger my eczema, whether it's chocolate, tomatoes, which is technically a fruit, but it's a nightshade fruit. That whole family seems to trigger my eczema. White potatoes don't really agree with me. So some foods that we think of as healthy are problematic. Spinach is a good model to illustrate this because we think of that as like Popeye and it's this super healthy food. It's green, but spinach has a lot of a compound called oxalates or oxalic acid. Oxalates are a major component of the main kidney stone that humans get. 75 to 80% of kidney stones are calcium oxalate kidney stones, and dietary oxalate can be a major contributor to that. Probably the biggest contributor to our oxalate levels in our body. Oxalates are naturally produced in our body in small amounts from breakdown of certain amino acids, but spinach and other foods, almonds, navy beans, rhubarb, turmeric powder are some of the big ones. These are huge sources of oxalates. So if you have kidney stones or you have a family history of kidney stones and you don't want kidney stones, it might be well to avoid those things. We know that there are poisonous plants in the environment. I mean, I grew up in the Northeast, and at Christmas we would have these poinsettia plants. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Super toxic, right? So kids, like little kids, should not eat the red leaves of the poinsettia. So not all plants are benign for us, and there is this spectrum of plant toxins. So that's an interesting distinction for me to think about. Again, you can detoxify some of these plant defense chemicals with cooking or fermentation, but not all of them.
The problem is that you have so much good content and so many things that I want to talk about because, I think a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, we're interested in money. We're interested in building businesses. We're interested in maybe ethics and morals and what it means to be an American. But man, you can't really have a strong bank account without a strong body. Or if you do, what does it really matter?
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point? And so I think this is really interesting for anybody who wants to live a better life. I mean, also just if you want to have better brain function and cognition,
that's what I was going to say.
You got to be healthy.
It's going to pay dividends, right? Having better mental clarity means everything in your life is amplified. Romantic relationships, family relationships, business, make more money. You want to express your highest potential.
What's interesting is you have an organ food supplement line. What's it called again?
Heart and soil supplements.
Yeah, you have heart and soil supplements. And I actually forgot to tell you this, but my husband, Chris, is a big user of them.
Oh, cool. I brought you guys some.
Oh, he's going to love that. He gets all my gifts, actually. But he actually got me on them because I found that organ meat was really helpful for my face, like just like collagen. Like I found for a while I was traveling a lot. I don't eat enough protein typically, and I don't do fillers or anything like that. And I kind of had these like bags under my eyes. And anyway, one of my doctors was like, are you getting enough collagen? And so I started taking some collagen protein. Kind of messed with my stomach. I didn't really like it.
It can.
And then I started eating some organ meat. But this is TMI for the internet. I felt like I smelled different. Is that a thing? Do people who eat a lot of organ meat smell different?
Was it better? What did your husband say? Was it better or
worse?
worse?
Like the smell, but he's a weirdo like you. He's like, I love the smell of you. I'm like, I don't know. It's weird.
Completely possible that you could smell different. Now, the context is there a human that's kind of turned on to this or in the same space and like,
they're into it. Yeah, he's a creep. He loves the workouts. Oh, the internet's like not this. We're gonna have so many weird YouTube comments. But what I will say is that the supplements that you have, I don't have that.
Okay, interesting.
And so that was actually really helpful for me.
Okay.
But talk to me about. I think if the average person would hear, you know what I should do? I should eat more heart and kidneys and organ meat. That sounds gross. Plus, there was a really big, huge guy that did it, and there was a bunch of crazy stuff that came out about him.
I know.
And so, why would I do anything crazy like that? Why would I eat organ meats?
So, if you look at meat, so you go to the grocery store, you see ground beef, you might see chicken, you see fish, you see steaks. That's all muscle meat. Muscle meat is super nutritionally rich for humans, very bioavailable protein, but it doesn't really have a full complement of vitamins and minerals. And organ meats, especially liver, if you start with liver, are this beautiful sort of completion of a nutritional profile. If you look at what's in a steak and what's in liver, there are very few vitamins and minerals that are not represented there. Vitamin C, so raw liver and raw steak do actually have vitamin C, but people could argue, rightly so, that you're going to get more vitamin C from orange juice. But other than vitamin C, there's not much in looking at a whole suite of vitamins and minerals that are not present in animal muscle and liver. People would say fiber, that's a separate conversation, so we get it. But if you just look at muscle meat, high in B12, high in zinc, high in iron, not a lot of copper, not a lot of folate, not a lot of biotin. Liver has all that stuff. Liver has copper, which balances zinc. So historically, humans have always eaten the organs. We waste nothing, right? Whether it's for calories or necessity or some sort of historical intrinsic knowledge that these organs are beneficial for fertility and vitality, we waste nothing. I went to Tanzania, I spent time with the Hadza, some of the last hunter-gatherers left on the planet. And when they had the liver of an animal, we hunted a few animals together, they treated it like gold. 2 hands placed gently on a rock, cut into small pieces, distributed evenly among the tribe. This is
Raw?
This is a treasure. No, they cooked it.
Okay.
This is a treasure in their world. The treasure. All of the organ meats are a treasure. The hunter who killed the animal gets to eat the brain. And that's something that's queasy for us. But there are pieces of the organs, there are parts of the animal, the organs, that are a reward to hunters. Historically, the heart was gifted to the hunter who killed the animal, some sort of spiritual sort of recompense. So there's a lot of history of humans eating organs, and when you look at the science, it's fascinating around the nutrient profiles. But one of the coolest things for me is that building this company, Heart and Soil, that does these organ capsules for people that I do think make it easier to get organs. They're freeze-dried, which preserves as many of the nutrients as we can in a gelatin capsule, is that the team over there is amazing, and they did some really fascinating research about sort of nutritional benefits of organs that go far beyond the vitamins and minerals. And to do this, we had to go to libraries in Germany, like Heidelberg Library, and find the original volumes, because the historical research has been done since the late 1800s to like the 1950s and 1960s, but most of it has been in Europe, and it's in German originally. So just because it's in German doesn't mean that it's interesting, compelling research, but it does mean that most of us in the Western English-speaking world have never seen it. And so we actually had to find the original volumes and translate the research from German to English. And what you see is there's a lot of evidence that organs do support the corresponding organ in humans, which really breaks the mind of a traditionally trained doctor like myself. So when you give, we can take an embryo, for instance, and you put a little bit of liver on the embryo, and that liver concentrates in the liver of the embryo. You can do this with radioisotope labeling. You can do it with like other types of labeling, and you can see, like not visually, but in terms of measured research analysis, that the organ goes to the corresponding organ. So what is going on there? It's fascinating, and there are many, many stories now. It's anecdote, but this is a summed amount of lived human experience that I think is really important not to ignore, of humans eating organs or eating the desiccated organs like we make, and having benefits in the corresponding organs. We make a supplement at Heart and Soil called Her Package, which has uterus, ovaries, fallopian tubes, kidney, and liver. And so many women who have struggled with infertility or PCOS have found benefits from taking this. Again, this is just anecdote, but it's a fascinating sort of question to be asking. Are these organs beneficial beyond the nutrients in the organs? The dose of the organs is 3 grams a day or less. And there's interesting research that when you look at the organs, it's a fraction of the organ called the microsomal fraction that contains things like microRNA. And the hypothesis now that we come to looking at this historical research, which is fascinating, is that there are probably signals in the organs that are preserved in the freeze-drying process, but potentially denatured when we cook the organs, that can signal and actually affect the genetics or the gene transcription and translation in the corresponding organs. So there's actually information and signals that could support an organ beyond the amount of hormones, because it's minuscule amounts of hormones in 3 grams of desiccated ovaries, right? We have another one for men, which has testicle in it, called Whole Package. Similar results for men in terms of male vitality. The amount of testosterone in Whole Package is minuscule. It's in there, we've tested it, but there's not a lot of androgens. And this was an original criticism of the organs, that you would have to eat 500 pounds of testicle to get a biologically active dose of testosterone. Maybe that's slightly off, but even a 3 gram dose appears to be beneficial. And there was actually a guy, there's been some published research in, I think it's 1889, in the Lancet, which is a historically, obviously very long-standing journal. I believe it was Brown-Séquard who has a neurologic syndrome named after him. He taught at Harvard, elite universities in Paris, who injected himself with a testicle extract and reported that he had increased vitality at 72 years old. So this is fascinating, right? So the guys doing interesting things over 100 years ago. Most of this research on organs has been lost, but we're just helping to revitalize it and get people back into thinking about like, oh, let me eat the whole animal. And if you can eat some of the animal, some of these organs raw, which obviously has potential risks that people should be aware of, or desiccated, that is freeze-dried, it's pretty interesting what's happening here. I think it's going to be a real sea change when people start to understand, and maybe we get some new contemporary research on this in a lab.
Did you know, for instance, silencer versus raw milk, which is more illegal in more states?
I bet raw milk.
Raw milk. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah, like in Texas, you have to have permit numbers on raw milk here locally in order to get it, and you can't get all different types. But there are more states where raw milk is illegal than silencers, which I thought was interesting. Okay, next one. Homeschooling with no curriculum versus fentanyl.
You said me. I
guessing.
That's crazy. Homeschooling.
Isn't that homeschooling with no curriculum? That's an important caveat. Versus fentanyl. And
wow.
It turns out that homeschooling is more illegal. How fucking crazy is that?
They want your kids. They want your kids propagandized. They want your kids hypnotized.
Oh my God, it's a real problem. But I want to play some other games with you really quickly. Rapid fire, and this is perfect. We can start with raw milk. Mm-hmm. I just did is this a bad idea or not? You can tell me. I just did a raw milk, goat milk cleanse with like herbs.
Okay.
For potential parasites. I did it for like 14 days. 8 days only raw milk. Mm-hmm. First it was awful, I think, because of the herbs. Like it didn't feel very nice. Yeah. It's not enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Also, I'm like marginally lactose intolerant. Oh yeah. So it's really fun for everybody. But afterwards, but it's placebo. Maybe I feel better. Was that a bad idea or no?
You know, I don't know anything about the
raw milk cleanses.
Yeah, raw milk cleanses. I think raw milk is amazing.
Do you drink it?
I drink it all the time. I drank it before I came over here. I've got raw milk in my backpack right there.
Of course you do.
Yeah, in a stainless steel water bottle with some glyphosate-free honey.
That tracks. Because you've also been known to take what to an airport that's really weird?
Coconuts.
Yes. Yeah. Although I knew that trick.
You did?
Yeah, with the straw.
Yeah, you knew the straw trick.
Yeah, that's an important trick.
I take all kinds of weird things through airports. They're always like looking at my stuff. I'm like, yo, guys, it's just hamburgers in a glass container. There's some squash there, and I brought some persimmons on the airplane today. I had some air-dried steak, and that's about it.
It actually sounds amazing. Okay, so we're into raw milk. Shredded cheese.
Can I just talk about raw milk for a minute?
Okay, let's do it.
So raw milk, any raw food has a risk of contamination.
Okay.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people sickened every year by eating salad, right? Sushi, all kinds of things that we are exposed to. Beef tartare. Raw foods have a risk, and the quality of the raw milk determines everything about how good the raw milk is going to be on the back end. If there's no difference between raw and pasteurized nutritionally, why drink raw? Why not just do pasteurized? But there's a lot of interesting science about raw milk positively affecting the immune systems of kids who drink it when they grow up on or off farms. So there are specific studies looking at lower rates of asthma, eczema, and allergies, the things I suffered from but didn't drink raw milk growing up, in kids who drink raw milk, whether they grow up on a farm or off a farm. That's interesting stuff, that raw milk could potentially program our immune system in certain ways. So we're kind of back to the organs thing, right? We're back to animal foods benefiting other animals across species. That's fascinating to me. So I would argue there are unique benefits to raw milk, and we should help support producers producing it safely and cleanly.
Why did we stop doing raw milk versus pasteurized?
Good question. So up until the early 1900s, all milk was raw. In the early 1900s, people were moving off of farms into cities, and people wanted milk. A lot of people were sickened by raw milk because they were milking cows in subsanitary conditions, mixing feces or urine with the milk. Doesn't sound very appetizing. And they were feeding cows swill, which is the spent grains of alcohol fermentation. That's where the term swill comes from. And so they were feeding cows garbage foods. They were milking them in subsanitary conditions, and people get sick. And then the milk was heated and pasteurized. And that helps with the public health issue, and we never sort of got back to the idea that we can now, with more technology, make milk raw in clean conditions and potentially expose this to people who can benefit from it.
Goat milk or cow milk raw?
I like both. I prefer goat milk, but that's just what I have access to easily in Costa Rica. There's a goat farm near me. I can go and milk the goats and see them.
Stop it.
No, I've done it. All the time.
I'm just picturing Paul Saladino with like a coconut in one hand, a goat in the other.
It's like an udder in one hand, and yeah.
That's pretty incredible. Actually, this is a big movement. I feel like trad wives everywhere are into your lifestyle. You probably have them knocking down your DMs right now.
I wish. It doesn't happen. No, I wish.
Okay, calling all single women.
I need a trad girlfriend.
Yeah, you do. I feel like they'd be into this.
The thing about cow milk is the casein variant. So there's A1 versus A2 casein in cow milk, and some people find they tolerate A2 better. So all Jersey and Guernsey cows are A2. And sometimes you'll see this terminology on cow's milk now. It'll say A2, A2. If I'm going to drink cow's milk, I prefer an A2 cow's milk. All goat milk, bison milk, camel milk, horse milk, whatever, everything else is all A2. So if people are sensitive, think about A1, A2 if you're drinking cow's milk, or if you want A2 and you can get goat, that's easier. Goat has about 11% less lactose, so still a significant amount of lactose for people that may be lactose intolerant. Despite anecdote, it looks like people can still get lactose intolerance from raw milk. If you start slow, maybe you can change it. I used to be pretty lactose intolerant, and now I drink probably a liter plus of raw milk per day and don't have any lactose intolerance symptoms, but it doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
And if you are lactose intolerant and you want to do milk, you can do kefir, which is fermented milk, or yogurt, or cheese. There are a number of raw cheeses that are fermented for more than 60 days that have essentially no lactose.
That's fascinating. You know what I found really interesting is when I did the goat milk cleanse, I was satiated. I was not hungry all day.
Right? Going back to our earlier conversation about satiety.
100%. So people are like, are you hungry? I'm like, I'm actually not. Like, not at all. Do I want that cheeseburger? Yeah, that sounds nice. But do I actually feel like I physically need it? No. I don't. So it's really interesting. I want to hit on this one's for Stanley Sanchez, my father. Let's talk about American cheese and shredded cheese really quickly, because he's a big fan of both. And your videos, they mess me up a little bit.
Yeah. So the thing is, shredded cheese. A lot of shredded cheese has cellulose on it to prevent caking, and when I've done this in the videos, put shredded cheese in water, you can see that the water turns cloudy. It's just full of cellulose, which is wood pulp. And it's hard to know what type of cellulose the manufacturer uses. Some types of cellulose, some cellulose derivatives are probably pretty harmful for the gut. But if you don't want wood pulp on your cheese, you might just have to deal with shredded cheese that clumps a little bit. A lot of shredded cheeses also have natamycin added, which is an antifungal agent. You don't want your cheese to be moldy, but again, do we really have confidence that we know what long-term exposure to an antifungal like natamycin is doing to human guts long-term? We have all sorts of species in our gut. Some are bacteria, some are viruses, some are fungi. We want them to coexist healthily and happily, and more additives in your food with shredded cheese. American cheese is not actually cheese. It's only a cheese product. It cannot legally be called cheese because of the actual ingredients in it. And if you look at it under a microscope, it's full of all sorts of garbage, right? It's packaged in plastic, so certainly there are endocrine disrupting chemicals from that plastic leaching into this sort of plastic cheese. It's full of microplastics. It's just not a good thing to be feeding our families.
So what type of cheese do you eat?
I like any sort of raw cheese. So there's raw cheeses traditionally, like Parmigiano Reggiano in Italy. That is a raw cheese by definition. You cannot have a Parmigiano Reggiano certified cheese that is not raw. An equivalent in sheep's cheese is Pecorino. Gruyere is often raw. I like all of the raw cheeses.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, if somebody's listening to this today and they're like, where do I start? Like, what are like the 3 easy things today that I could start to do if I want to detoxify either the things I put on my body or the things I put in my mouth? What are you leaving them with?
Start with your food, right? Because you're taking it into your body. This is becoming the cells of your body. So I think that there's very little that we do in our lives that has a bigger impact than the food that we eat. And I think that don't let perfect be the enemy of good when it comes to your food. If you have health issues, think simple. Start maybe with meat and fruit, and then see if the health issues get better over time, and then add things back gradually. And that's just, I think, a good starting point for people as a framework, as a blueprint. Doesn't have to be that exactly. More broadly, just get rid of processed foods. Eat things that your great-grandmother would have recognized, and you'll be in a really good space with regard to food. In terms of clothing and everything else, just gradually start reading labels, and you'll be sort of wide-eyed and surprised, and think about what you're putting on your body, what you're putting on your skin, and improve that as you can.
I love it. I've been lately ending with this question of, what's one, either maybe in your case it's a study, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a short story that you keep going back to again and again? Like, is there a source of inspiration for you written that you go back to?
Inspiration, or a study that I am interested in terms of the research?
Could be anything. It could be your favorite. Maybe you're really into fantasy books. That looks like you.
What are you saying about me, Cody?
I don't know what it is, but you tell me. What do you go back to or is top of mind for you when I go to something that Paul keeps going back to learn from?
Do you know who Khalil Gibran is?
Yeah.
He wrote a book called The Prophet. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So in terms of not science related, just life lessons, I always go back to The Prophet.
Why?
I just find it beautiful. I find the words beautiful on marriage, on children, on relationships, on love, on work. You know, it's a very interesting set of poetry that I think holds a lot of resonance for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Paul Saladino, thanks so much
Thank
for being
you so
here.
much for having me.